Hello there, welcome to Inkquiring Minds. My name is Doug and I'm back with another Fountain Pen Resurrection Sunday video. Just a few days ago I did an unboxing of 4 vintage fountain pens, and you can see that video by clicking right up there. But I selected this one as the first one to repair. It seems to be the juiciest one of the bunch. It is the Vacumatic of the bunch, and I'm really fond of Vacumatics, and I'm very, very fond of these Golden Pearl, Azure Blue Pearl, Emerald Pearl stacked celluloid fountain pens from the 1940s. This particular model is a 3rd generation Parker Vacumatic in Golden Pearl, and I couldn't find a date code on here. There's a couple of dots but no number, so I'll have to wait until I get at the nib to see if there's a date code on this, but my guess is it's between 1942 and 1948, because that's when these 3rd generation Vacumatics were made. After the beginning of the war, Parker redesigned this Vacumatic pump to have celluloid parts rather than the aluminum parts, because they needed the aluminum and the brass for the war effort. I've gone over this entire pen and there doesn't seem to be any large gouges, just lots of wear for 80 some odd years of use. You can see some wear where the cap was posted over the years right there, and of course the typical cap rash from the cap being twisted on and off the pen over the years. And here's the imprint, Geo S. Parker, Parker Vacumatic, made in the USA. And again, just 2 dots there, but no number at all. Maybe they forgot that, I don't know. And there's another dot right there, but I think that's a divot. I don't think I'll be able to get that out because it would wear out the imprint. I don't want to do that. On inspecting the Vacumatic pump, I discover it has an actual latex diaphragm in there. I tested it in some water and it sucked up about 1.5 milliliters of water, which is almost a full fill. This is a non-blue diamond split arrow clip that you see in the more standard models, not the top of the line models. The top of the line models have a larger cap band and a blue diamond clip. This one without the blue diamond clip and 2 cap bands, one of them is missing, would be indicative of the standard model. But everything's in pretty good shape, and we examine the nib, and there's a lot of corrosion, old ink and stuff like that on that nib, but it looks otherwise in perfect condition. And I'm thinking that's probably a fine nib, but it looks very nicely aligned. There is the Ebonite feed that we can polish up. So even though this pen has a working, functioning diaphragm, I do want to get that section off and inspect at least the function of that Vacumatic diaphragm, make sure it works properly, maybe inspect to see how old it might be and whether it might need replacement. The Ebonite section has no marks on it whatsoever and is in perfect shape. So this pen was well cared for. One of the things that is disappointing is the missing 2nd cap band. The first one here is dull because it's lots of tarnish. It almost blends in with those beautiful celluloid stripes that you see in the stacked celluloid. Beautiful chatoyance. Look at that gold. So once that's brightened up, it'll look nice, but the missing cap band disturbed me. So I have a couple of Parker Vacumatics that I'm using for parts, and one of them had a gold band. I've never done this before. I've saved it here in this plastic cup. Here it is. And I'm going to see what I can do to put this cap band in place there. It's slightly bigger than the cap band space. That's probably because the celluloid has shrunk to the point where the first cap band fell off. So the celluloid shrinks over the years, but the metal does not. And so hence the cap band gets loose and falls away. But there may be a way to shrink that cap band down. I'm thinking that I'm going to cool it off with some ice or something like that to get it to go a little bit smaller, and then put it in place and tack it down with some glue. And once it's in place, then I can polish the whole thing. This cap band does look a little bit thinner than that one. It might just be an optical illusion because it's slightly bigger. But we'll give that a try as well. Don't want to lose that little part. So the first thing I need to do with this pen is to soak it for a while in some pen flush in my ultrasonic bath. And the pen flush is 9 parts distilled water and 1 part ammonia. And I'll leave it sit and get all the extraneous ink out of it for a couple of minutes, and then we'll see whether we can get that section off. So the pen was absolutely chock full of black ink. I don't think I've gotten it all out, but most of it anyway. Let's see whether we can loosen that section. They're not supposed to be shellacked down, but you never know. Some restorers like to do that, and it's not coming loose. So I'm going to give a little bit of heat to that section, and if it won't release again, I'm going to soak it some more. There we go. And it's moved a little bit. There we go. Just a little bit of heat to soften up that shellac or old ink. I'm guessing it's shellac. And there's our section and breather tube. And a few cotton swabs down in there. This will come out black. And the diaphragm feels nice and soft and springy, which feels like it's new. So we'll get out the inspection cam here and go down the barrel and take a look. So I successfully knocked the feed and nib out of the section. Unfortunately, what I was not successful at was pressing record. So you'll just have to take my word for it. It came out very easily. Now, what I did discover right here, there is a marking, date marking is a .5 for the third quarter of 1945. So I'm dating this entire pen as third quarter 1945. Third generation Parker Vacumatic. It all lines up, and all of these parts are going back into the pen flush bath, and then we'll go after that nib to see how nice and shiny we can get it. Let's put it right over here in anticipation of seeing over here a nice shiny gold nib. And there we are, all polished up. Look at that. Isn't gold amazing? Just a couple of minutes on a buffing wheel and it looks like it's brand new from 1945. So the next thing we're going to try is to see whether we can get that clip off so we can do the same beautiful restoration on this clip. And I'm going to polish that cap band as well. See what I can do with just a jeweler's cloth on that remaining cap band. Just a couple of swipes with a jeweler's polishing cloth should make it brighter. Well, not really. Not so much. I think I might have to buff that a little bit. But certainly while we're doing the polishing of the cap, that'll brighten up that cap band as well. So, and I think in terms of the replacement of that second cap band, I'm going to do all the work on this cap first, get it all polished up and ready, and then install the new donated cap band and see about fixing it to the cap, getting that all correct, and then doing whatever polishing I need to get rid of any blushing that might come from the glue. But first off, let's grab a pencil and a little bit of gripping material and see whether we can get this clip off of here. It's always good to put a little bit of a card right there to keep it from doing any more damage to the cap. No, it doesn't want to budge. Does not want to budge. So I'm going to add some of my Peter Piper Picked a Peck of Pickled Peppers, Pensbury Manor Penetrate Pen Potion number 7, say that 7 times fast, to that cap finial and see whether a few hours of soaking in the magic formula might release it. You just put a drop on there and a drop on the inside, and we'll let that sit. So I got these parts out of the bath, and the feed looks good. I'm going to polish that up. The section looks great. I was going to polish this up by putting it back in the barrel and then putting it on my buffing wheel. This is Ebonite, and just buffing the Ebonite up. But it got crunchy right around there. So that tells me that, yes, there was some shellac applied to this section and section thread. So I'm going to try to scrape that off. It's a little bit tacky. Just scrape the remnants of that shellac off of there. I don't believe it's necessary to shellac these Parker Vacumatic sections down to the barrel. There are a lot of threads there, and they're very fine. And with some silicone grease, I've never had any issues with these pens leaking at the section. And that affords the user the ability to open this pen up whenever and flush it out with a syringe or a bulb syringe with some clean water and really get some good cleaning done. Whereas if it's shellacked shut, again, that's kind of a semi-permanent thing. You have to get after it with some heat, and you could do some damage with heat if you don't know what you're doing. So I'm just going to clear out those threads of any extraneous shellac, and I'm going to add a little bit of silicone grease to those threads just to allow the threads to mesh nicely while I polish up this section. I don't want the section sticking again. I'll run it back and forth a few times. There, that's better. It's not sticking as much. There. Now I can polish up both the Ebonite feed on the bottom where it's visible and the Ebonite section so it's nice and shiny. And then we'll talk about the barrel and the cap. And there we go. There are the section and the feed. Both Ebonite, all polished up and beautiful. And now I can remove that section and turn my attention to the barrel. And it looks like we've got some really nice transparency. Probably needs a little bit more cleaning. I might just push one of my test tube cleaning brushes on the inside there a little bit and give it more agitation in the ultrasonic bath just to make sure it's all nice and spick and span in there, and you get this really nice translucent barrel. But the outside of the barrel needs some attention as well. Not a lot. I've looked at it carefully and it doesn't look like there's any signs of gouging or scratching. But when I go through my micromesh from 1500 grit to 12,000, when you start with 1500, it actually mats up the surface really nicely, and you will immediately see where there are some gouges or marks that you can't see right now. So there might be one right there, for example, and if I find those, then I'll go after it with my 400 grit flexible sandpaper and then go back through the micromesh. It feels like there's a bit of an issue right there where the cap is spun around on it many times and it's left a little bit of a groove there. So we'll go through all the micromesh and we'll come back and see it all polished up. So I stopped part way through here to show you how I haven't done anything to this bit right here, but I got that gouge out from underneath the imprint. I found a couple of scratches on the blind cap, and I got all those out with this 400 grit flexible sandpaper. And all the way around here there's quite a groove that has been worn into the barrel from the cap being turned on and off for so many years. I've gotten most of it out, and it's not visible. I can actually feel it, but it's not visible anymore. And then I went after it with my 1500 grit, and what was interesting is, in sanding with the 1500 grit, look at that little shiny spot right there. That was invisible to my eye, and so when I went over it with the 1500 grit, it showed it up in sharp relief, matte around the outside and shiny in the center. So now I find that spot, I go after it with some 400 grit, and I don't see it anymore. Go over it with some 1500 and it's all matte again. It works just that nicely. I avoid the imprint, of course, until I get up to the finer grits. If you do this a lot, your sandpaper will get a buildup, and I've found a couple of ways of extending the life of this sandpaper. I've had this for like a couple of years now. First thing I do is I give it a shot of compressed air, just like that, and blows those particles out of there. And then I got this stick for rejuvenating your sandpaper on Temu. I think it was Temu or AliExpress. And you just rub it in to your sandpaper, and it gets all those fine particles out of there and renews your sandpaper to be used again. Nice little tool. And there we go, with the barrel and the section all polished up. Went through all the micromesh and then some polishing compound with my buffer wheel to get it into a lustrous shine. Now there's one nick that I did not remove, and it is right there under where it says Made in the USA. And there were two small dots. They're still barely visible right there. Usually there's a dot, a number, and a dot, or might be 3 dots or no dots, but there's always a number. But this time we got 2 dots and another dot. And that doesn't look like a gouge made by someone misusing the pen or dropping it or something. That looks like a stamp to me. So could it be that our worker in 1945 in the Janesville Parker plant just had a bad day and just missed with the die? I'm not sure. They usually have a die that has the number in it for the year and 3 dots, and for each quarter they'll grind off one of the dots. So 3 dots is the first quarter, 2 dots is the second quarter, 1 dot is the third quarter, and no dots is the fourth quarter. The nib says 1945, so I'm just thinking that someone fucked up here at the Janesville factory. That's my speculation anyway, but isn't that beautiful? Now I need to get that clip off the cap, and we'll do the same thing to the cap. So while I was editing some of this footage, I noticed close up that date code on there is not .5 or 2 dots and a 5. It is 5-1 with 2 dots, which is very unusual. Starting in 1950, Parker did not use their date codes with the number and the dots. They put the year. From 1950 to 55, they put 50, 51, 52, 53, and so forth on the nibs. But they stopped making the Parker Vacumatic in 1948. Now, I've put a question into the Fountain Pen Network to see if anybody there knows about this 51 date code. In Canada and in Britain, the nibs would have said made in Canada or England on them, and into the 50s they had date codes of 50, 51, 52 like this, but not from the USA. So I'm thinking that this is a replacement nib, that whoever bought this pen in the mid-40s sent it back to Janesville to get the nib repaired or replaced, and they got this one. Parker would have stamped this nib in 1951, repaired the pen. It would help if the barrel had a date code on it, but it does not. Unusually, as we've seen, I can see 3 faint dots. You might not be able to see all 3. Maybe you can just see there. You can just see 3 dots right there. And in the center of those 3 dots should be a number. There's no number, and it couldn't be worn away because the dots would wear away as well. I'm still saying that this is mid-40s. I'm going to guess 1945. Let's just go in the middle. And this is a replacement Parker Vacumatic nib from 1951. Now, these nibs were interchangeable with the Parker Duofold as well. Maybe Parker had a supply of these nibs and just stamped them with what their current practice was of stamping the date codes 50 through 55 in that era. Your guess is as good as mine. I've let this sit overnight with the Pensbury Manor Pen Potion number 7, and it will not budge. And on further inspection, I see remnants of glue all the way around right there, and some remnants of glue right there too. So my speculation is that this 1945, circa 1945, Parker Vacumatic Golden Pearl was made in the mid-40s, was recently with a new diaphragm, and whoever restored it glued that clip down and glued the section down as well with shellac. Now I was able to heat that off. I could heat this off. In fact, I might give it a try, but I'm not going to risk damaging this cap by forcing that clip off. The only reason to get the clip off is to make it easier to polish it up and make it easier to polish up the cap as well. So I'm going to try to attempt a little bit of heat on that, see if I can get it off. And then we're going to use hot and cold to try to put a new cap band on that cap once I'm done with this. Well, that little bit of heat did the trick. Just a little bit of heat from my heat gun, and I'm able to unscrew this. So I'm guessing that that's shellac that's in there. Yep, some old shellac on that brass and a little bit on the inside. So there we go with the clip. Oh, it's still warm. I'm going to, let's put it on this side and see what it looks like before I start polishing it. And then we'll put the polished one on the other side over here. Now let's take a look at the cap. There's some scratches there and some typical wear. So I'm going to mask this off with some masking tape, and then polish this up with my micro mesh and polish and buffer wheel, and we'll do the clip as well. I'm not sure that that jewel will come out of that brass fitting. Might give it a little bit more heat, see whether I can get it out. So a little bit of heat on that jewel released the jewel from the brass fitting, and there it is, and remnants of shellac all over it. So I'm going to clean these items up in the pen flush ultrasonic bath, and then we'll polish the clip up. And here is the clip all polished up. I'll put it on this side of the screen so you can see what it looked like before and after. Looks gorgeous. These clips were gold filled, very solid gold, lasts years and years and years. And the cap looks brand new, and that cap band polished up nicely too. So we're ready to put the clip back on, but first I want to try to replace that cap band with the donated cap band. I'm going to try to freeze this gold band here to shrink it, and I might even heat the cap a little bit to expand it to get it to fit, and then we'll tack it down. So everything's been polished up and ready to go. I can put the nib, the feed, the breather tube, everything back into the section again, and then do a test write. So I've inserted the breather tube. I actually sanded down the Ebonite stem of the feed a little bit to lubricate it a bit with some Ebonite dust, and polished up that bottom of that feed as well. So we get some gripper material here, and our funky 51 nib, line it up. I've looked at the nib and it needs a little bit of alignment, but I'm going to put it on the feed first, see how well it aligns, and we'll see if we can find that sweet spot. I think it's right there. There, let's see whether we got it fully seated. Yep, all the way back to that lip right there. Perfect. Add a little bit more silicone oil to those threads. Wipe off my fingerprints, and there we go. Looks brand new, doesn't it? Now let's check the alignment here. Nope, looks perfectly aligned now. Sometimes it's not aligned when it's out of the section, but when you put it into the section, it lines up. So let's do a dip test here with some Waterman's Serenity and see what we have. I'm going to continue to call this a 1945 Parker Vacumatic, and it's Golden Pearl. I think I've got some threads caught in those tines there. It's fairly smooth, a lot of feedback, and it's extremely fine. EF, and it's got a bit, just a bit of flex to it, just a bit of bounce. But I think I'm going to have to do a little bit of work on this nib, and then we'll fill it up and see what our capacity of ink is. So I've smoothed the nib a little bit, and it's writing nicer. It's still an extremely fine line, so I'm going to fill this up and check what the capacity is. I'm weighing the pen at 10.59 grams. We press tear, and it takes several pumps. Usually takes 5 or 6 before that siphon fills up. And if you want to see how a Vacumatic pump works, I did a short video that illustrated how the vac pump works in a demonstrator Parker 51. It was loaned to me by my friend Murray, and you can see that video by clicking right up there. So now I think that's fairly full. 1.62 milliliters of ink. That's perfect. That's just about right. So it means that Vacumatic pump is working correctly. So now that we're full of ink and I polished up the nib, it's writing better. 1945 Parker Vacumatic in Golden Pearl, and it has an extra fine 14 karat gold nib, and it's decently wet. It's got a little bit of bounce to it, and it writes a line that is 0.4 millimeters in thickness, which is bang on an extra fine Western nib. This fine nib really makes you want to do squirrelios, doesn't it? It's writing very nicely now. So I went ahead and I took the frozen gold ring, heated up the celluloid a little bit, slipped on the gold ring, and tacked it down with a couple of beads of CA glue. And of course, it's blushed along there a couple of places. Wait for that to dry a little bit more, and then I'm going to polish that out. And we can put our polished up clip and our end finials back together again, and this pen will be done. And there, I think that looks pretty good. You can't really tell that one of the rings was missing at all. So now we can put this clip back together again, and we're going to put it back together in the right place. It was sitting right on one of the breather holes before. We're going to place it between the two breather holes on the pretty side. There we go. Which side is that? Oh, the pretty side is where the hole is. So these stacked celluloid are basically bright on one axis and dark on the other. So it's bright on that side, and then it's dark there and dark there. That's typical of how these sheets of celluloid were created. So we're going to put it right between the two breather holes right there. Cleaned up the brass nut, and I've ground my own slot screwdriver that's the right thickness and width to handle these Parker Vacumatic clips without scratching the gold. So I've got it a little bit loose right now. There we go. Line it up. Actually, I'm going to use my pencil again just to give something to hold on to back here, so I can hold on to the clip at the same time and get some downward pressure without stripping that screw. There we go. And just tight without breaking it. There we go. So now we'll put the jewel back in again. I've cleaned all the old shellac off it. So the jewel goes inside the brass, and we use a little bit of ripper material and our pencil again, and we turn that until it's tight. There we go. You can use a rubber band if you like. I like using this rubber shelving material. There, and now that top finial plastic needs to be buffed up, so I'll do that right now. And there we go, 30 seconds on the buffing wheel, and it's shining right up beautifully. And there we go, one resurrected 1945 Parker Vacumatic Golden Pearl fountain pen. Gorgeous, beautiful, writes lovely. If you like extra fine, this is one for you. I'm very pleased with this pen, and I'll be back with my thoughts on this resurrection. So what are my thoughts about this fountain pen resurrection? Well, this is a beautiful pen right out of the box. It was partially restored in that it had a working latex diaphragm in it that I didn't need to replace, but the nib needed some work. It was really in sad shape visually, not in sad shape functionally. It needed some smoothing and some adjustment, and it's a very fine, juicy line that it's writing now. The rest of the pen was in good shape, except the hardware was tarnished. There was a lot of wear on all of the celluloid, and that clip was glued in, and one of the cap bands was missing. So I successfully transplanted a cap band from another Parker Vacumatic, and I think it makes the pen look perfect and complete. These Golden Pearl Vacumatics from the mid-40s are really, really gorgeous. It was hard to date this one with no date code that I can see on the barrel, and the date code on the nib being rather confusing, and it says 51. It's not 1951. I mean, this pen wasn't made in 1951. My guess is 1945, give or take a couple of years. But that nib, I think, was a replacement either by the original owner or by whoever restored this pen. Maybe they had a pen that had a non-working diaphragm and no nib or something like that, and they picked up a replacement nib. I suspect that that's a replacement nib from the Janesville, Wisconsin Parker factory in 1951 for a 1940s pen that was repaired or sent in for repair. That's my guess anyway. Your guess is as good as mine. But if you're interested in purchasing this pen, I'm selling it for $200 US plus shipping. Send me an email at inkquiringminds@gmail.com with your name and your address, and I'll get you a shipping quote. Shipping to the contiguous North America right now is about $10. And just to let you folks know, in the United States, as of now, what they call de minimis for duty purposes has been eliminated, so that everything coming into the United States is going to be subject to tariffs. So I will put a value of $200 on this, and you'll have to pay a tariff on it, even though this is made in the United States. It says right on it, made in the U.S. So sorry about that. But if you're interested in this pen, simply drop a line and I will let you know how to pay for it with my PayPal. And I'll send it off to you quickly with some tracking information. And there you have it. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, and don't forget to ring that bell to get instant notifications whenever a new video is posted. And you can join as a member of my channel for only 99 cents a month, and I guarantee I'll answer your comments in the comment section, and you'll get cool emojis, badges, sneak peek unboxing videos, as well as instant access to my videos the moment I post them. And that just leaves it for me to say thank you for watching. And that's all she wrote.
I made this.